Bottom line is, guys, there is no free lunch. And those people that are looking for a free lunch, well, they're going to starve because it just doesn't happen.
Yet attitude means, how can I proactively change the way I think? How can I proactively increase my life? How can I proactively create better relationships and better work situations for me to enjoy it?
And welcome to the GAP, the Get Attitude Podcast. The Gap, bridging the gap from who you are to who you want to become, and from where you are to where you want to be. Hello, this is Glenn Bill, founder of the University of Attitude, keynote speaker, and author of the ABCs of Attitude. Been fortunate enough to have helped tens of thousands of people get attitude. Attitude, the secret formula to success in your business and in your life. And this podcast is going to help you get yours. So let's get some. I want to welcome everybody today as we are now on to Attitude Booster number 4. Do more than you are paid for. And boy, does that create pain in most of us. You mean I got to do more than I'm paid for? Well, yeah, unfortunately you do. You know what? The key to financial wealth, the key to unbelievable relationships is to do this thing called do the work. And when we talk about doing the work, we know that work is just the beginning of creating a life and creating a vision for yourself that pays you deep dividends. And all fortunes are found in the root of work. You know what? The great Zig Ziglar said, when you do more than you're paid for, you will eventually be paid more for what you do. And sometimes you'll be paid more maybe than you're worth if you just set the tone. I love thinking about this story of there was a king and he summoned all of his great generals. And he said, I want you to go out to the land and I want you to find the wisdom of the ages from the people that live under me. And so the generals went out and did this, and they interviewed all the elders, all the nobles, everyone in the kingdom to find out what is the wisdom of the ages. And these folks came back with 12 volumes, 12 huge books of the wisdom. And the king said, you know what, I don't doubt that this is the wisdom of the ages, but this is too much. Nobody's ever going to read it. It's just too many. So I want you to go and refine it and try to bring back something that's a little more manageable. Well, of course, the generals all came back and they whittled through those 12 volumes. And the next thing you know, they come back with just one huge volume. And the king said, you know what, still too much information. It's too much. Go back to the drawing board and let's get this thing done. Well, the next thing you know, these generals come back, and all they did is they just gave him one chapter. And they said, you know what, this one chapter will give us the wisdom of the ages. And he said, nope, still too general. I want it. Well, as the story goes, they came back with a page, and then they came back with a paragraph, and then they just came back with one key saying. And that key saying is simply this: do more than you are paid for. That is why this is Attitude Booster number 1. I believe that doing more than you're paid for is the definition of value. It is how you create value in the marketplace. It is how you increase your status in your work, in society, in your relationships. You always got to be giving more than you get. I don't think this is a crazy philosophy for anybody to grasp. The question is do you give more than you get? Are you a giver or are you a taker? The bottom line is, guys, there is no free lunch. And those people that are looking for a free lunch, well, they're going to starve because it just doesn't happen. And the Get Attitude podcast is not about you starving. It's about you thriving. It's about you bridging the gap from who you are to who you want to become. When you look at the person that you are and you look at the person that you want to come, you can't cross the bridge. You can't bridge the gap with no work. Action must happen. Movement must occur. And oftentimes, what you need to happen in your life and in your career and in your relationships, you know what? They don't happen unless you happen. They don't work unless you put in the work. You know, if you want to occupy your place in the sun, you're going to have to expect there to be some blisters, right? Like if you want to be standing out, if you want to become a leader, if you want your place in the sun, you're going to have to get burned a little bit. I just love that saying. You know, work is the price we pay to travel the highway to success. The highway of success is not paved with apathy. It is not paved with indecision. It is not paved without clarity, and it certainly is not paved without this thing called work. So this little nugget, this little booster, do more than you're paid for, is going to be talked about on our next 4 podcasts with some incredible guests. Doug Branson, who actually runs the podcast for the Charlotte Hornets NBA team. Doug was instrumental in starting our Get Attitude podcast. He can help you start yours as well. He talks to us about being in media, being in news, working long, long hours to develop what he's developed. And you talk about people that are underpaid. It's people behind the camera in a media organization that are doing the hard work in hopes of raising their status. We are also going to be talking with a gentleman, Mr. Steve Jacobson. Steve is the president and CEO of Fairway Mortgage. They did $39 billion in mortgage loans. $39 billion, a top, I want to say 5 or 6 mortgage company in the United States. Steve, we've had a few of his people actually on our podcast. When you talk about culture, when you talk about the idea of giving value first, and again, the definition of value, which you've heard, I'm sure, throughout our podcasts, it's what you do for your customer on behalf of your customer before you even ask for the sale. And when we talk about doing more than you're paid for, look at it, infers that you got to do the work before you get paid. If you're trying to collect money, if you're trying to get ahead in life without doing the work, guys, it's not going to work. So what we hope you're going to do when you listen to Steve is you're going to learn about the work he did to walking in and being a loan originator from day one to now being the president and being on top of the mortgage industry with $39 billion in loans. Steve also is a huge giver, and he has Fairway Cares as well as the American Warrior Initiative where they're giving away homes. And Steve Jacobson's interview is extremely powerful by one of the best leaders that I know. We will also be talking with Gary Brackett, former inside linebacker for the Super Bowl champion Indianapolis Colts. Gary was an undersized linebacker. He was overlooked. And you talk about doing more than you're paid for. The lessons that you're going to learn from somebody who made it in the NFL, look at when you're undersized, when you're doubted, which I know a lot of you are, right? A lot of you are sitting there going, how do I move ahead? I'm handicapped. The people who are judging me, the people who are in charge of my destiny, which is no one, by the way, but the people who you think are in charge of your destiny may not like you. They may not love you. They may not believe in you. But that's why we have Attitude Booster number 2, believe in you, right? Because you got to make sure that you create your own destiny, not somebody else. So there's that old saying, if you don't program yourself, life will program you. And the bottom line is we know that the Get Attitude podcast is here to help you take control of your own life, control of your own thoughts, control of your own emotions so that you can bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be. There's a few sayings that I like to talk about when we mention this thing called doing more than you're paid for. And here's a couple of them. Number 1, we can best guard against losing our shirts by rolling up our sleeves and keeping them rolled up. Are you willing to roll up your sleeves? That's what this really is all about. The people that you are going to hear are people that are willing to roll up their sleeves. My question is, when have you rolled up your sleeves in your life and gotten paid? But the other question is when have you rolled up your sleeves in your life and not gotten paid? See, that is the big question. So many of us say, gosh, I worked so hard, and nothing came from it. But some of us failed to continue to work, to keep our sleeves rolled up. So what happens, right? We stop one day before everything could change for you. I don't know what you're working on in your life or in your business right now, but I can assure you this. If you want to succeed and you want to get to the top, you're going to have to keep plugging, because you never know when the good Lord's going to say, tap you on your shoulder and say, hey, now is your time. You know, work is the foundation of all business. It's the source of all prosperity, and it's the parent of your personal genius. What am I trying to get you to do with Attitude Booster number 4? I'm trying to get you to take action. I'm trying to get you to work. That's what really Attitude Booster number 4 is about. And we're going to have 4 inspiring guests that are going to talk to us about getting to work. Question for you. Am I getting to work? When you look at your day, hopefully you're charting your day to say, what am I doing with my time? You know, so many people say this thing about time management's tough. There's a formula that I live by. No matter what the task is, no matter what the part of life that you're in, there's only very few things that make the most difference. And it's important that you identify those few things. There's usually 4 to 5 things that make about 80% of the difference. Now, it's not always 4 or 5, and it's not always 80%. But I think you guys get the point. I want you to look at your lives. I want you to get a pen and paper and write down spiritual, financial, business, personal, emotional, learning, social, and say, what are the 4 or 5 most important things I should be doing in these areas of my life, right? Putting in a little work before we're getting paid, and identify those. Then the biggest trick to your time management challenge is spending most of your time on the smallest things that make the biggest difference. See, most people are out there majoring in the minors. They're out doing things that aren't the most productive thing they can be doing for themselves. And then at the end of the day, I want you to schedule what those most productive things are. I would love to show you a picture of my calendar. My calendar has, every hour on the hour. I've broken it down. I know the 5 things in every area of my life that make the biggest amount of difference in my life, and that's what you see on my calendar. I challenge you to do that when we talk about this thing called doing more than you're paid for. You know, work can do more to advance our youth than any person or parents ever thought they could. How many parents are making their kids work? Are you a parent that makes your kid take out the trash, clean the house, mow the grass, or do you pay somebody to do that for you? I'm going to tell you this, the most important gift you can give your children is the gift of work. Now, I know they're not going to like it, but there's a lot of things that come out of the philosophy and the activity of doing work, doing more than you're paid for. Now, some people can give an allowance, that's fine. But I know when I grew up and I was doing work, I never felt like my allowance actually paid what my work was worth. However, when I was done, I always felt good about accomplishing the task. If you have children, one thing I would strongly encourage you to do when we talk about do more than you're paid for, and I think you're going to see this work positively for your relationships, is when you and your kid, or you or your kid, do a piece of work and finish a project, you're going to see that bond between you two will grow. It certainly lays the foundation of every fortune in relationships and every fortune monetarily. The most beautiful philosophy or plan won't work unless you do. And I think to instill that into our youth, that is what we are looking to do. If you don't teach a man the trait of working, you know what? You're just going to raise a thief when it's all said and done. Here's what I'd like to point out. You never work for somebody else. Never. Now, somebody else might write or sign your check, but the truth is that you work for yourself. Inasmuch as you will eventually determine what the person who is writing that check fills in to that blank. I hope that makes sense. See, so many of us, when we talk about do more than you're paid for, are focusing on who we think we're doing work for. And the biggest key to your success is I always work for myself. Somebody else is just signing the check. This is when we get into morale of companies, job dissatisfaction. And I always tell people this, look, you don't have to love your job. You just have to love the way you do your job. And if you understand and embody that principle, what you're going to find out is that, yes, in fact, I do work for myself. I am responsible for the work that I put in. You know, every job is a self-portrait of the person who does it when it's all said and done. Your value, what you are paid, is a self-portrait of what you're contributing and doing. And so it's just like a portrait painter. You know, when your job is done, you can look at it and you say, hey, that is the self-portrait of the job that I've done. I don't know if you're in commission sales, if you're working for a large corporation, what you do. But understand that what you do, it is what you do. It is a reflection on you. It is an investment, right? It is an investment in your future. This concept of doing more than you're paid for is best defined as this: when I feel like I'm being undervalued or underpaid and I push forward and I do the work, you know what? It's really an investment in my future. The biggest gamble in life, right, is the effort that you put in. And the people that get ahead, the people that have more, do more, and create more, those are the ones who gamble the biggest. It's the folks who aren't willing to gamble with their effort that get held back, that live in certainty, that lower the bar for their lives. So the question is how much effort are you putting into your life? You know, the basic truth that applies to business, sales, or anything you do, whatever your endeavor is always provide more service than you get paid for, and you will develop a reputation that separates you from the rest. What's your reputation? What's your reputation, not only at the workplace, but in your life, in your relationships as a parent, as a child? Your effort doing more than you're paid for creates the reputation. Are you somebody at your workplace that people look for and they go, not a real hard worker, isn't giving us what we want? Reputation's a big thing. And I think when you hear from our podcast guests, you're going to sit there and go, wow, these people got some good reputations. I think a person's reputation really wraps up what do more than you're paid for is. If your reputation isn't what you want it to be, then what I'm going to tell you is this: your effort's probably not where it needs to be. So I got a few quotes from the great Les Brown, who I love. I've studied with Les. And when it comes to your reputation, I think these are important. I think these are something you need to listen to, and I hope that you write them down. Because when it comes to doing more than you're paid for, which ultimately reflects on your reputation, you need to remember a few things. Number one, and you might say these with me when I'm done: I must be willing to do what others won't do, to have what others don't have. When it's all said and done, what are you willing to do? The second great quote is, look it, I don't know what you're up against. I don't know what you're facing. But here's what I do know. You have got something special. You have greatness within you. And I know it is possible that you can live your dream and do whatever you wish, especially if you give more value than is expected. Blow people's minds with the value that you bring to the table, even when it's just meeting them for the first time. You know, how's that done? I'm going to tell you the number one thing you can do is have presence. Have presence with people when you meet them. But you know what? Not only with other people, Sometimes you got to give yourself more value than you're giving yourself right now. Sometimes you got to do the work on yourself that you're not being paid for, because the bottom line is the investment in yourself will create the opportunity for you to grow and for you to succeed in life. I want you to make sure that you first forgive yourself for your faults and for your mistakes, and I want you to move on. The bottom line is this: the greatest revenge is massive success. So Gappers, I look forward to engaging you over the next month with Attitude Booster number 4, which is do more than you're paid for. I hope that this message of value, this message of work, this message of reinventing your reputation, and I hope this message of doing more than you're paid for resonates with you and increases your value, not only to your family, to your employer, to your business, but most importantly, to the world. This is Glenn Bill with the Get Attitude Podcast. We are trying to change the world one attitude at a time, and I know this: if we all do more than we're paid for, it's going to happen. I hope that you join me at the University of Attitude on Facebook. I hope you join the Attitude Movement on Facebook. We're trying to get 1 million likes on that. Please rate, subscribe, review the Get Attitude Podcast, and share this message. We will look forward to seeing you over the next 4 episodes.